Welcome back to the Fathers of Fitting podcast. I am your host, Cassie, and I am joined by our four fathers. We have Nick and Paul and Jason and Ian. Last time we talked to you guys, we got to meet the guys. We got to learn a little bit more about their history in fitting, their history in golf. So since we have all of that out of the way, we're going to dive in today. A question that we hear all the time from golfers, from people in the Bay, is they want to know about club advancements and technology advancements in the sport of golf. That is such a huge landscape, so we're going to narrow it a little bit today to just talk about shaft technology. Let's start with wood shafts. So we'll start at the top of the bag. We're going to divide and conquer a little bit. I'm going to have Ian and Paul talk to us a little bit about wood shafts, and we'll start with Ian. So Ian, can you tell us what you feel the biggest club advancements with wood shafts have been in the last decade?
I think the versatility of the designs, Cassie, there's kind of like a chain of advancements in technology, and the shaft manufacturers kind of have to follow suit somewhat. So, you know, when Titleist came out with the Pro V1, the solid core golf ball, the golf ball spun less, the heads reacted accordingly with their designs to react to the ball, and then the shaft manufacturers react accordingly in sort of with how the head and the ball are interacting. So I think club shafts have advanced to the point where they're now taking advantage so much of this kind of higher launch, lower spin, this technology era, the launch monitor technology era. I think that's the biggest thing that we've seen. Obviously, the selection that we've got, I think all our stores have probably got over 100 driver shafts to try, high balance point, low balance point, high torque, low torque, whatever it might be. But in terms of advancement, it's just the amount of options that we've got now. Watching the manufacturers, get creative with putting tungsten powder in the handle to raise a balance point to, cater for somebody who needs either a shorter driver or loves a kind of head heavy feel, that type of stuff. And, it's just, there's so much more that can be done now, and it just gives us more options to fit our players.
Paul, do you have anything to add to that for wood shaft specifically?
No, similar, along the same lines. I think the biggest thing we've seen over the last few years is just the variety of shaft options, different bend profiles, different weights from lightweight to a little bit heavier, lower torque, high balance. There's a lot of good options out there now for different types of players, as Ian was saying. And then obviously they've improved the materials, the multi-materials that they're using in the pre-preg carbons now. Velocor is probably a good one. That came out. It's one of the most used shafts on tour at the moment. And, it does produce a little bit more ball speed, I've found. Off-center hits are a lot more stable now with the better shafts. And even moving away from those aftermarket shafts, your stock shafts are so much better than they used to be. You go back 10 years and a standard shaft was pretty terrible. Wall thickness, out of shape. So even that's improved. So, yeah, I think it's come a long way. And it's just having all those options at our disposal. We can fit anyone. So yeah. I'm sure it's going to keep progressing, yeah.
For sure. Yeah, there's only going to be more options as we move on. So let's shift into iron shafts then. So same story, but a little bit of different technology. We'll start with Jason. So, Jason, tell us how you feel that iron shafts have progressed in the last decade.
Well, you go back 10 years and you're looking at, maybe 15 years and you had Diamond Gold or bust, right? You had either super heavy or you had this junior ladies steel combi thing that was just a one flex job. And now you've got stepless, you've got stepped, you've got high balance, low balance, tip stiff, tip soft. I think the biggest thing is look at the steel shaft range. You can go from a 75 grams or 65 now, Z.6, Z.7, or you like Shimada, all the way up to 135 grams Diamond Gold X7 for King Kong, right? And either way, it works. So you just got to find what works. But then you've got the KBS model coming in, or KBS obviously strong, Project X with no steps as such. So a different feel. Whenever you have steps in the shaft, you tend to get more feel. And the guys that want a bit more of a banger, boardier feel will go for the stepless shaft, like a Rory. And that made me laugh when he got fitted, when he was struggling to a Diamond Gold profile, because he's never used that profile. So I was like, well, they ain't going to last, are they? And they lasted a week. So it's stuff like that. Once you know where you're going and what you're doing and where it's going, you can kind of get someone pretty dialed in pretty quick. And that's where we come in as experts, going in, okay, well, what do you want to feel? What do you like? What you don't like? I have this sort of 3 golden rule thing. How much weight can the player swing? Where's the weight in terms of top, middle, or bottom? and how stiff is the tip. If you keep following those 3 golden tickets, you kind of get a close steer on what's going to be good. What you can't have in the bay, I think, with steel shafts is time wasting. You stand there and hit every steel shaft, you're going to be dead on your feet. So having so many options is a blessing and a curse. And, back in the day, you had the Nippon 950 as the classic lightweight shaft. Well, that's now seen as sort of a middleweight type feel. So it's evolved massively and it's changing all the time, right? Stronger steels, thinner walls, and it's just moving on all the time. That's what I feel it's kind of helped us get someone to an outcome, I won't say quicker, but just a better outcome, as I would call it.
Sure, yeah. Nick, do you have anything to add about iron shafts specifically?
I do, but I might die. Did you guys hear that? There's somebody on the ceiling up here. Did you hear that, Cassie?
Yeah, Nick and I are recording in the same building, and there are people walking across our ceiling right now.
It's like elves up there or something. They sound like really husky elves. It's like elf-sized me. No, like for me, it's there's particularly in irons. I think what I've seen over the 20-some years is, to Jason's point, steel used to be in this 120-ish range. Graphite used to be in this like 65, 70 range. And now you got steel shafts ranging 65 up to 135. You got graphite ranging, iron shafts, let's say 40 grams up to 135 grams. So the amount of options that we have to work with are just incredible, not only on the steel, but the graphite side. I'll say when we talk about technology advancements too, for me, graphite, I try to tell people all the time, the whole stigma of graphite is less consistent than steel, all those things, all those myths are gone. In fact, the advancement in technology of graphite shafts is really where it's been at. You can make a graphite shaft way more precise than a steel shaft. You can make a graphite shaft do a lot more things than a steel shaft because you can change the dynamics and the kick points and the bend profiles, everything much more in a graphite shaft than you can a steel shaft. And then, I know Ian and Paul alluded to it in the woods, but it's still similar iron shafts. Now, steel, not as much, but graphite, just the amount of different materials you can use now, whether it's a tie metal mesh or a Bellicor or whatever it is. So, yeah, I mean, it's come a long way. And then you got all the flexes too now. It used to be you had air quotes, A flex, R flex, S flex, X flex. Now people are realizing that flex is kind of not a universal measurement. And there's a lot of different ways to define a flex for a golf shaft. And having all these different flexes and different kind of ranges allows us to fit golfers just way more precisely.
Yeah, that's fair. So other than the graphite kind of misconception, I'll pick on you a little bit, Nick. Do you feel like there are any other misconceptions about shafts when you're hearing customers come into the bay and ask questions? Do you feel like there's just a misunderstanding out there about either woods or irons?
Oh, 100%. And I think I talk about this when we're training our fitters here. A lot of customers think that these shafts just spit out of a spaghetti machine, right? Like there's like a guy cranking on the side of it and these shafts are just shooting out of it. And I have a couple videos that I show in our training of how these shafts are made, whether it's here in the States or it's over in a foundry somewhere else. But I mean, it is a labor intensive, hands-on process, the way these shafts are made in order to perform to the high standards. And that's how they demand pricing, and that and the quality control, which they put into the shaft. The higher the price, the better the quality. I think we can all speak to that pretty easily. But yeah, I mean, it's the misconception that they're just all the same with a different paint job. Couldn't be farthest from the truth. Sure.
Paul and Jason and Ian, do you guys have any other misconceptions that you guys hear in the bay consistently about shafts?
For me, it goes along that same line of the graphite iron shafts, being for the weak player in that. If you look at some of the iron shafts, LA Golf, for example, the L series, I mean, that thing is a beast. Like I'm fitting guys swinging 110 with a 6-iron in that, and they're hitting that thing online, tight dispersion, super consistent. So, like I said, I think we're going to see a transition into graphite irons for a better player a lot more now, moving on. I think that's going to be the big change over the next 10 years.
Yeah, definitely see that. The grey zone, as I call it, where you got steel and graphite almost coming over the top of each other. And what you've tried and got to do is get the player to, if you like, park his ego or her ego and say, look, just hit it. How's it feel? What's the data saying? It's working for you. And that's a big thing now, is getting over that stigma of it's a graphite shaft. It is so stable. You can't even really, I mean, it sounds a bit corny, but you can't even call them graphite shafts. It's just, it's a shaft and it works for you. It doesn't work for you. But what we're seeing is, I see a lot of it is players are quite weight sensitive. If you go too heavy, too light or whatever, You can get the same bad results with either steel or graphite. It doesn't make any difference either way. You've got to get it where they feel comfortable, or they load it up, or whatever methodology you use. Right? Doesn't matter, just as long as it works.
One other thing, Cassie, I think maybe that we see, or we certainly talk about, and we've tested it quite a lot on the channel, is not always following the manufacturer's guidelines when it comes to shaft profiles and what the shaft does versus what it's supposed to do, or what it's supposed to do versus what it actually does. I think the unique element is that we all interpret these shafts a little bit differently, how we feel them, how we load them, how we time them, how we release them. What's on the end of the shaft, one head versus another, is going to make the shaft react and deflect in different ways. So, it's not taking a Ventus red profile and expecting it to go to the moon versus Ventus black and expecting it not to be able to kind of get more than knee high. It just doesn't work that way. You see loaders like Cameron Champ playing things like Acrates 6, very, low torque, but very soft tip profile. That shouldn't make sense because he's in conventional wisdom because he's a fast swinger. It doesn't work that way. So, without knowing your kind of unique DNA of your load pattern, you have to get tested. You have to come to a fitting studio. You've got to come and see what works for you. It's like what Jason said. Certain people are very timing sensitive to different things. And unless you know what that is specifically, you have to go through the full range and get tested.
For sure. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to shift gears slightly. So we dug in a little bit on equipment. So let's shift to kind of a more general fitting question. This is going to be for all four of you guys, but one of the big things that we hear constantly, especially from beginners, is what comes first, lessons or club fitting? So it's the chicken or the egg conundrum that we have, and I'm sure we'll all kind of have a unique take on this. So let's start with Paul. Tell us which one you feel comes first, lessons or fitting, and how they work together.
Well, I think a beginner, you got to get some basic fundamentals to start with. But in saying that, you also need a tool that's somewhat suitable to learn with and create some decent technique at the same time. So I think initial beginner coaching is going to make the biggest difference right at the start, as long as you're using something that's not too heavy or stiff to suit that individual at the same point. So I think it's always a little bit of a balance here and there. Unless you've been playing golf for a long time, then you've already developed a swing pattern, and equipment's going to take you to that next level because you ain't going to change that swing if you don't practice. So,
right. Okay, Nick, what about you? I know I've heard your spiel before, but how do you feel about lessons and fittings working together?
Well, I do think it's a balance, but I will say what I think is more important at the get-go. I always tell people, I go, you cannot go get lessons. You cannot work on your game if somebody has not looked at your setup. Doesn't mean you got to buy anything. Doesn't mean you have to, do anything. But you need to understand whether your equipment is impeding your ability to make the golf swing at which your coach is trying to get you to make. And I've seen it so many times. I mean, that was what took me away from worrying about flexes and things like that. I saw weight, torque, spin profiles pay, damage or make a swing better just through a fitting. So, I think people need to make sure that they go and get a proper checkout and make sure that they have something that can work, the proper lie angle, the proper length, something that's not too stiff or too heavy, too light or too soft, things like that. Work on your game, get some lessons, and go. Now, I think if you're, more of an avid golfer, the people we normally see day to day, I think that paradigm switches. I think, you can go along and keep taking lessons. You're not going to make any super dramatic changes. So having the proper equipment to make sure that you're maximizing everything you're doing is just as important as the lessons. But I think you got to do both. And I think you got to make sure you have the equipment to be able to make the changes you need in your swing.
Sure. Ian, what about you? Lessons, club fitting?
Yeah, as long as we're not talking about the novice first timer, Cass, I think that's where obviously, tuition is vital to get those fundamentals dialed in. But beyond those first few weeks and months, your golf clubs are going to shape your golf swing. So the way that you sort of, or the hurdles that are in front of you with the clubs that you have in your bag, whether they are blades, they're heavy, they are strong lofted, whatever it might be, those golf clubs are going to shape your golf swing. So if they're not right for you, you're going to build in a set of compensations that ultimately are going to be really hard to work out your game. So I think it's just find a fitter, build the trust, have a relationship, follow the journey. It's just how I like to think about it, and however that is, and whether that's a fully customized set in terms of we build it grip shaft head and we go through SST, we do the full thing, or we're just saying, okay, this is the right grip size for you, this is the right length and weight, this is the right style of head with the mass down low to get the ball nice and high. So just building that relationship and making sure that your golf clubs aren't holding you back from developing at the rate you should.
Sure. I mean, you spend so much time and energy practicing. Why would you want to hinder that?
Absolutely.
Jason,
it's a hard enough game.
Oh, it's so hard. Jason, what about you? Do you feel that lessons, club fitting, one comes before the other, or that they can work together?
Well, I've always said this is a parallel line theory. You need both to work. I will say, I use my wife as an example, right? So she's 5'2", 57, 58, I should get that right. But she's 5'2", right? And she's got arthritis in her hands, so she's a nurse by trade. And her clubs are short, light, and she's got grips like Jumbo Max on there. Now, if she goes in and gets a normal golf club with a normal grip, she can't hold it. She's going to hurt her hands, right? She just can't even do it. Therefore, what does she do? She gives up. How many people have we lost to the game because their clubs are crap, right? I bet it's zillions, right? I can give you that as a number. It'll be a zillions, right? It's a hard game. So you've got to get the right stuff to start with before you even get messed up by coaching. And I would actually go as far to say, and be controversial, the standard coaching is pretty average, right? And if you're trying to get an average coach with a bad club to get you going, your chance of you keeping it in the game is pretty low. So I think if you get the right clubs to start with, it can be basic, like Ian said, even if you're just like literally one club will do the job, right? Get the ball in the air, get some confidence. I can actually play this game. I can get it going. And then you can build from there. And like Ian was dead right, relationship, trust, you feel that you can actually have an open conversation like, I'm not very good, but, can you help me? Yeah, sure. Not just go and snigger and laugh at somebody and go, oh, you've missed it. Because that happens, right? And you've got to be able to stand there and go, no problem. You're gonna whiff it, but let's just try and help you. And give them big loft gaps. What I would say is when you're doing the fitting like this, when someone coming as a beginner, you want big loft gaps, a hybrid, a 7-iron, a wedge, a 9-wood or 7-wood. Don't even touch a driver, stuff like that. Get it in the air, get it going forwards. A level of skill where you can feel that you can actually play the game. And I think that's a massive thing that we have to communicate outwardly to the golfing public, because we still see it all the time. It drives me ballistic, to be honest.
I like it. We ended on a bit of a strong take. I like that. All right. So this question was actually submitted by someone in the field, so someone in the Club Champion family. It's a 2-part personal question for you guys. You're all international travelers. I think our listeners and viewers have picked up on that by the accents and the fact that we're all dialing in from various corners of the world. Because of that international element, I have a 2-part question. We'll start with Ian. Firstly, what is the farthest you have traveled for a round of golf? And secondly, what course is a must play when international travelers are in your neck of the woods? So
China would be the farthest I've traveled to play. Played in northeast China in Dalian. The must play when you're in the Toronto area is TPC Toronto, 3 courses. The Hoot, what used to be called the Hoot, the Toot, and the Heathlands. Everyone tells me, if you're from Scotland or England, you've got to play our links course here, the Heathlands. This is not a links course, not to be confused with a links course, but it's a gorgeous golf course. It's our only TPC facility in Canada, and it's, to be honest, the best bang for your buck anywhere. 3 courses, you can get a day pass, play them all. Summer solstice, they do a play all day event, and 3 courses, you'll just never get tired of playing.
Oh my gosh. Ian, how long was that flight to Canada? From Canada, rather, to China?
From Canada to China? I want to say we were 12 hours, 11 or 12 to Beijing, and then we were another few up to Dalian in the northeast. So it was a long one.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I love golf, but that's another level. Jason, what about you? What's the longest you've traveled, and what is a must play when someone is out by you?
Are we talking work travel, or are we talking personal pleasure travel?
I would say probably personal pleasure, but if you've got like a really good work one, we can talk about that too.
Not that good one. No, I've travelled like to California working for TaylorMade in Callaway, played Aviara all around there, which is lovely. So, but pleasure-wise, the furthest I've gone to would have to be, oh goodness me, Cruden Bay near Aberdeen, which is a great golf course. Played the Northern Open there as a pro. That was an amazing golf course. Favourite course, it was. I mean, if you're playing in this country, there's so many good courses, but North Berwick, Royal County Down. But I would have to say, for pleasure, yeah. And my area, I'm very lucky. I am 20 minutes from home, from Wentworth, Sunningdale, Swinley Forest, all the Woking, West Hill, Warburton, some great golf courses, top 100 courses all around me. The nearest one that's really good to me would be Hankley Common, which is an amazing golf course, which has got the final qualifying for the British Ladies Open this year. That's an amazing golf course. If you're ever in this part of the world, you should play it. It's as a one-course complex. I'd say it's pretty hard to beat anywhere in the world. It's amazing. It's amazing.
I saw Ian
I'm very
nodding.
lucky. There's some
I saw
great.
Ian nodding when you were listening.
I've got to say, I've got
some of the best golf.
North Berwick as well. I mean, I know it's a bit of admission, but North Berwick Golf Club has got a special feel for me. I thought that was unbelievable. I thought that was actually better than St Andrews. Hushed my mouth, but I thought it was unbelievable.
Oh wow! I can't believe you said. And Ian's nodding. What? North
Berwick is special. It's got something about it. Don't ask me what. It's got something about it.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh my gosh, I think that might be a hot take. I'm not sure. Okay, we'll move on to Paul. So, Paul, what's the furthest that you've traveled for golf, and what's the must-play course near you?
Well, the furthest I've traveled for golf is the golf show in Orlando. It was actually when I played with you, Ian, actually in the Accra day.
The Accra day.
Yeah, in 2018. That's, for me, it's about 28 hours to get there. So anywhere outside of Australia is a long way to go and play golf. We're so far away from everywhere. But I'm in Sydney. So Sydney, there's only a handful of really good courses here compared to Melbourne where there's just hundreds, right? So in Sydney, La Perouse, New South Wales Golf Club. It's like a links-style course right on the water, on the cliffs. It's easily the best golf course in Sydney. And then the Australian Golf Club. Both courses are within 10 minutes of where I am, so I'm pretty lucky to be near those. And then you've got the lakes also in Sydney, which we play a few Australian Opens and stuff there. So they're your sort of top three in Sydney. Apart from that, if you went to Melbourne, the Peninsula Kingswood North Course, it's a new course. I prefer to play there than Royal Melbourne. So unbelievable golf course. It's probably the best layout I've played. It's unbelievable.
I want a company day out to Australia, please. Is that possible?
Yep.
Yeah, we'll hook it up.
Are we funding that? Just
give Joe a ring, and I'm sure he'll sign off on it. No,
I think we can make it happen.
No
Nick, okay, what about you? It's going to be hard to beat 28 hours, but what's the furthest that you've traveled?
I don't travel outside the United States to golf very often, so I guess Scotland would be the farthest. And that was good. I loved it. Hit all the major marks. But in the United States here, well, let's see. If you're talking private, you're going to play Pine Valley. If you're talking public, let's think about that. High end, Pebble Beach, you got to hit up Pebble Beach at least once. I don't think it's that good, but you got to do it. The scenery's good. I may have gotten engaged on the 18th green there. But then I would think, like if I were telling somebody who's coming over from overseas, hey, where's a good spot to go land for a couple days and play golf? I still think Bandon Dunes is about as good as it gets.
Heard that.
Yeah, there's a lot of nodding happening for our audio listeners. Everybody concurs. Awesome. I'm super jealous that you guys have gotten to play in all those places. I'm kind of like Nick. I don't leave the United States very often, and when I do, it's usually to go to Jamaica or an island. So I need to up my game for golf travel. Although I don't know if I can handle a 28-hour flight, Paul. That's insane. So that brings us to our final segment. That is a game that we're calling Analyze This. So if you guys are familiar with the last episode, I give the guys the name of a professional golfer and then a couple metric categories, and whoever guesses those metrics most closely wins a point. So last time we just kind of went around the horn and did this, but we actually had a couple of suggestions from listeners and viewers to make it a little bit more fair, which to me sounds like everybody thought Ian had an unfair advantage. Ian, I think your audience turned on you a little bit. So we're going to change it up just slightly. Well, what I'm going to do is I'll give you guys the pro's name, and then I'll give you the 3 metric categories, and I'll have you guys write down your answers prior to hearing everybody else's answers, and then we'll go around. No cheating, no changing answers. I will request photo proof of your answers if I have to. So this time, get ready. I heard a pen click. I think we're ready to go. The pro this time is Twitter phenom Max Homa. And the metrics are these: driver clubhead speed, average putts per round, and Twitter followers.
Oh, wow.
I saw 3 people roll their eyes on the last one. This is great.
What were the first two?
The first 2 were driver clubhead speed and average putts per round.
Yeah.
As reported by the PGA Tour, obviously.
Who's starting?
I'm going to wait until everybody. We got a couple inquisitive faces going on here. I'm going to give them a couple of seconds.
I'm going to make it up as I go anyway. So
I mean, you do you, man.
it's pretty on par with me.
Yeah. All right. Jason, you got your answers locked in. Ian, Jason, look at that. He's holding it. He's ready. He's got proof. Ian, you're good? Good. Paul, you good? Oh, look at these guys. I don't even have to request photo proof. They're going to show it to me. Okay, I'll start with Ian this time so no one can accuse anyone of unfair treatment. So, Ian, for Max Homa, what is your guess for driver clubhead speed?
117.
Okay, and then putts per round.
1 point. I know his putting stats are very, very good this year. I'll go 1.65.
That's per hole, so let me do some math.
Or do you want it per round?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
let's go 28.5.
28.5. Okay, and then how many Twitter followers do you think he has?
285K.
Okay.
I have no idea.
That's why I asked it. Luckily, he's one of the only pros that this metric is even relevant for. So,
Yeah.
All right, Jason. So Max Homa's driver clubhead speed.
I've got 119.
Okay, putts per round.
I've got 28.
Ooh, okay, so we're in the same range. All right, Twitter followers.
And I think he's 1.2 million because I think he's quite popular.
Gotcha.
But I've got no idea.
You're not a Twitter person?
I am for football and soccer, as you call it, but I've reined that back because I'll get controversial. I get a bit punchy.
Ooh, hot takes. I like it. Paul, Max Homa's driver clubhead speed.
I've got 120, 29 putts, and 1 million followers.
Million followers. Awesome. So we're like in the same range. I like this. Okay, and then lastly, Nick, driver clubhead speed.
118 3/4.
Okay, 0.75. Okay, putts.
28 3/4.
28.75.
Wow.
Okay, Twitter.
We really are
followers.
all in the same ballpark.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Yeah.
I think it's right. And then let's see here. I'll go with 504,362. And by the way, I just made up that number.
504. Say it
I'm
again.
just trying to make Cassie's life difficult, okay?
It was 543 and some change, is what you said?
You can just say 504. Yeah.
504. Okay. 504. Okay. Okay. All right. So I've got the numbers. We'll start with driver clubhead speed because it's the simplest and you guys were kind of all in the same range. So his actual driver clubhead speed is 120 miles per hour.
Wow.
Wow.
Faster than I
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah. So Paul, you
yeah.
nailed it. All right. And then for his and also he's ranked 28th on the PGA Tour for that. So like that's pretty significant. Like he's doing pretty well for
Nice
himself.
pass, yeah.
Yeah. And then so average putts per round. I have a little context for this, but the answer is 27.89.
Wow.
So you guys all had him higher. Yeah, you guys all had him at least a stroke higher. So technically, it looks like Jason at 28 was the lowest. So you'd be the closest. Some context for this. So he's ranked 6th on the PGA Tour for average putts per round, which is crazy.
Let's hit some more greens then.
I mean, yeah. And the USGA, so just for our listeners and our viewers, the USGA says that an average, quote unquote average, male golfer has at least 40 putts per round, while a scratch golfer, which they defined as a 0 to a 5, would average about 32 putts per round. They didn't have stats for the PGA Tour, but what I've seen is they average as low as 29 putts per round for the Tour, which means he would be a full stroke or more below the PGA Tour average, which is great. And then Twitter followers, the answer is 587,000 and some change. So technically Nick is the closest at 504. He is very popular on Twitter. He's not as popular as someone like a Tiger Woods who has 6.6 million followers, but Tiger Woods doesn't even do his own content, so that's kind of annoying.
That does not
He has
count.
a team that does it. But yeah, so he's sitting in the 500,000 range, and he's getting more popular every time he has a hot take. So with this new PGA Tour Live deal, I think that he's going to be at 1 million by the end of the year. So we'll see how this goes.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so our winners this round, and I'll pull last time's as well, just so we can get some tallies. So for driver, we had Paul. For putts, we had Jason. And for Twitter, we had Nick. So Nick has got a total of 2 points across these 2 episodes. Ian still has 2 points, and then 1 point each for Paul and Jason. So we're spreading the wealth a little bit. Awesome. Good job, guys.
Happy to
Puts me off 0.
Yeah. There's nobody that's lagging behind. So I think that's key at this point. Awesome. Well, that is all we have for the listeners and viewers today. Thanks, everybody, for taking the time to listen to the Fathers of Fitting, and we will see you next time.